message today is titled, Be Still and Know. Be still and know that I am God, the psalm says. It doesn't say be still and wonder, be still and think, be still and fidget, be still and argue. That's a favorite. Be still and wish, be still and claim. Be still and know that I am God. More broadly, this is related to our Unity's fourth principle, which we reviewed before. It reads, through affirmative prayer and meditation, I connect with God and bring out the good in my life. This is when we say be still and know, this is a practice that we can use to do exactly that. Frances Folk, the late Unity minister, wrote this in her book, Effectual Prayer. She writes, prayer is the way to travel the path from self to God. Prayer is to relax the physical so that God life may enter. Prayer is to let go of the mental so that God thoughts may take possession. Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore wrote, prayer is the language of spirituality. Have you ever had an experience where that statement, prayer is the language of spirituality? And of course, by prayer here we mean stillness, the kind of inner prayer. We might call it practicing the presence of God. Yes, we have talking prayers also, other kinds, but the core for us is an introspective or mindfulness, if you will, prayer where we simply sit with the stillness that's within us. And when our mind wanders, as it inevitably will do, we simply return our attention to that stillness that is within us. We are practicing the presence of God in this way. Be still and know. Mr. Fillmore had this to say in the revealing word, prayer is the conscious communion between God and humanity. Prayer is the most highly accelerated mind action known. It's a very nerdy way to say it, but it does get at the point. The most highly accelerated mind action known. And by the way, if you go to the Unity Seminary, that's one of those things you better know when asked. How did Mr. Fillmore define prayer? The most highly accelerated mind action known. More than supplication, prayer is the affirmation of truth that eternally is. So there are many, many ways of saying the same thing, because what we are pointing at is wordless. There are no words. It exists below the level of words. It exists in the realm of spirit. Below the level even of ideas is the spirit. And when we practice the presence of that spirit, amazing things happen in our lives. Here in our meditation this morning, a question was asked about what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? My favorite answer to that is that meditation is doing nothing for no reason at all, which our mind does not really like and has quite a difficult time with. You say, well, how can I wrap my head around that concept? Stop trying. Wrapping your head around it has nothing to do with it. Right? It's a practice. We do it. Here in Unity, we do have principles. And we do read books and scripture and talk about things. But the very core of our practice is practicing the presence of God. All right, so rather than being doctrine-driven, we allow the doctrine to guide us back to our core, which is the presence of the Spirit within each and every one. Now, you may have discovered this is not an easy thing to do, and it's not. And you may ask, how come there are so many ways of trying to express this? Why is that? Why are there so many ways? In fact, in so many traditions, it shows up. The Sufi poet Rumi, Sufism is the mystical branch of Islam. In Sufism, the poet Rumi said, silence is the language of God. All else is poor interpretation. So when we connect with the Spirit, we do so in silence. Now, it doesn't mean that our minds aren't chattering along. They are. But that's not where we're choosing to place our attention. And if I try and stop my mind from thinking, have you ever done that? That doesn't work. By definition, it doesn't work. Because what am I going to think that's going to make my mind stop thinking? Right? It's a trap, really. It's a way to keep me away, out of the presence of the Spirit, and stuck up in my thoughts. I had a Unity teacher, spiritual director, and instructor in seminary that liked to say that Unity is a 12-step program for humans. It's Humans Anonymous. Why, might you say, do we need a program called Humans Anonymous? What are we addicted to? I guarantee you we are all addicted to who we think we are. Right? Who our mind tells us we are. That's who we think we are. That is not who we are. We are spirit. And that's not just a nice idea. And to know that, you have to experience it. That's why we always stress practices. Practice is not beliefs. Practice is not assent. I say something that sounds like a spiritual truth and you think, yes, I think that's true also. That's good if it acts as a guide to bring us into the presence, to bring us into a place of silence. That's what it's all about. It's practices that drive what we do. I've been reading recently, again, Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr is a Franciscan priest, Christian mystic, modern day Christian mystic, like Thomas Merton was and so many others. And one thing I think that's cool, now this is like Bible nerd cool, so if you're a Bible nerd like I can be, in the forward matter of the book it said all scripture translations are the authors. You say, well, what translation did you go to the Bible to get that? He went to the Greek that it was written in and translated it himself. That's Bible nerd cool points. So this verse I want to share is from Ephesians 5. It's Ephesians 5:13. In fact, we have a notes sheet in the entryway that has any quotes that I'm mentioning on it, if you would like to have that in front of you. Everything exposed to the light itself becomes the light. How beautiful is that? What a perfect description of what it is that our practices can lead us to. Everything exposed to the light itself becomes the light. Richard Rohr wrote, and I'm going to paraphrase, in prayer we merely keep returning the divine gaze, and we become its reflection, almost in spite of ourselves. I think that last part, acknowledging our busy, busy mind that wants all of our attention on it. Right? We merely keep returning the divine gaze. What a beautiful way to put it. And we become its reflection. Prayer is any interior journey or practice that allows us to experience faith, hope, and love within ourselves. Right? Not as an idea, not as a word, but as a felt experience within ourselves. Prayer is practicing heaven right now, Richard Rohr says. Prayer allows us to relax. And when we relax, we can remember and feel God's presence and trust God. That's what we're here to do. To be still and know. Be still and know God's presence within us. And it does take practice. Unity minister Eric Butterworth had this to say in his book, Celebrate Yourself. He said, prayer is not a means of arousing God to action, but the process of waking up from our drowsiness so that we can see ourselves not in the mirror darkly, but face to face. Face to face. I had a teacher that said, if this is helpful, think of it this way. The universe is a mirror. What you bring is what you get back. Right? You know this flow of giving and receiving. We talk about it in many contexts. Particularly, as you know, I love to talk about it related to tithing, right? Because that's a really difficult thing to do. But it's true. What I show up with, what I give, I receive more back. We heard it in our daily word today, in fact. And that's true in all things. When I become willing to forgive another which, by the way, has nothing to do with them, right? It's for me. I'm the one carrying the resentment. I'm the one with the problem. Have you ever talked to someone and had the courage to bring up something that really bothered you that they did, and they have no idea? They don't even remember it. Or you talk to your siblings and you're like, what house did you grow up in? I thought we grew up in the same house. No, we didn't. I have a younger sister and an older brother. My older brother had 2 younger siblings. I didn't have 2 younger siblings. My sister had 2 older brothers. I didn't have that. It's not the same. It's different. Be still and know that I am God. Let's do it for a moment now. This is not our meditation, but I do want to take a moment and be still and know. We will, in a few minutes, do a meditation together, and this is how it goes. This seems like nothing. It seems like nothing, but it's everything. It is no thing, yet it is everything. This is the paradox of the Spirit. So just take a quiet breath and notice how that feels. Just be aware of the sensation of breathing in and breathing out. Do it again. The spiritual writer and teacher Eckhart Tolle says, he calls that a conscious breath. That just means a breath that you choose to be completely aware of. He said, if you do that, anytime it occurs to you, you don't have to set a timer, you don't count how many times you did it, you don't have a goal. It's not like your steps where you want to get 10,000. If you just do it whenever it occurs to you, it will change your life. Just that practice right there will change your life. I had a healing experience recently, a few months ago now. It has taken a while for sort of me to find my way with it, if you will. And when that happened, I thought, this is why I do what I do. This is why I have a practice, practicing the presence of God. This is why I pursue learning about spiritual things, why I'm called to teach spiritual things, or reluctantly, believe it or not. For as long as I'll go on, sometimes, when I was younger, this was the last place I wanted to be. Well, I've had this experience, so I've been doing pulpit ministry for coming up on 8 years. And for 7.9 of those years, I'll share with you that the day after, the Sunday, I experienced a crushing depression for about a day. It took me about a day to walk through it. Every single time, year after year after year. I came to name this experience after something Brene Brown shared about. She called it a vulnerability hangover. See, you instantly know what that is. Since I saw that phrase, I'm like, that's exactly what this is. I'm really grateful to her for naming it in such a way. Vulnerability hangover. So I would be kind to myself on that day. Do a lot of nothing. You know, if I wanted to play video games all day, I'd play video games all day. There's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. As I just walk through this experience, knowing this is not going to last forever. It never lasts forever. Knowing that if I were to actively resist it, it anchors it in place. You know this, right? What we resist persists. Because by resisting it, we're actually adding energy to it. And just go on my merry way, doing what I'm called to do, even though it had a heavy price on it. I remember the comedian Jim Gaffigan, who I think is brilliant. He's a very family-friendly comedian. In an interview, he said, someone asked him about stage fright. So he came up in New York City doing open mic comedy in New York City. Now you can imagine that's a tough crowd, right? And they're tough on young comedians who are trying to find their way. If you're not good, you're going to know it. And so there's a great opportunity for stage fright, called it. And they asked Jim, did you ever experience stage fright, and what was that like? He said, I experienced stage fright every single time for 7 years. And the phrase he used was, it took me 7 years to burn through that. Isn't that beautiful? One layer at a time. It's like a giant stack of paper, one layer at a time. One piece at a time. Keep showing up, being willing to do the work. Show up and willing to do the work. Why 7 years? That's almost exactly the time frame that I experienced as well, very close. And it helped me to hear that. It's like, oh, he is world class. I mean, this man is great at what he does. He and his wife are a writing team. They're absolutely brilliant. And it took a lot of work to get there. A lot of work to get there. So I have a spiritual director that I work with once a month. And working with my spiritual director and just talking about what's going on, and he might ask questions. He's absolutely not trying to fix anything, but a spiritual director, better name is a spiritual companion, somebody who walks with you on your path. If you have a spiritual companion, you meet monthly, not weekly. This is not psychological counseling. And so I'm meeting with him, as I have done for a long time, and I've known my spiritual director since 2013 because he was a professor, instructor in seminary, which I started in 2013. So I'm again sharing about this Monday vulnerability hangover experience that I'm very, very well familiar with, that has gotten lighter. I noticed it used to be a lot heavier. Over the years it's gotten lighter, but it's still there, almost always. It'd be really odd if it wasn't there. So we're talking about it again, and I say this vulnerability hangover, and he says, that sounds like shame. I'm like, oh, I can see that. I can see that. Brene Brown's phrase is a description of shame. Now, I don't experience it that way. I experience it like a dark cloud. It feels like some combination of despair, maybe, or depression even. I call it depression. I've experienced this throughout my life, and I called it depression. I see now what it is. And he said the weirdest thing to me, I've never heard this before. He said, despair and depression are not emotions, they're stories. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I've seen them on the colored emotion wheel. Because I started, like some of us, I don't know who, fairly emotionally illiterate. Glad, sad, mad, that was my palette. It's much more detailed than that now. He said, depression and despair aren't feelings, they're stories, because they are reactions to an emotion that when we were really little, we created because we had to in order to survive. Not because we're wrong, not because we're dumb, none of the above. In fact, we were very wise to do it at that time. The problem is we're still doing it, but we don't need it anymore. Right? It's like the river. You build a raft to cross the river. When you get to the other side, don't strap the raft to your back and keep going. The raft has done its job. Well, what if I come to another river, build another raft? We did it the first time. He says, can you feel this now? This is all feeling in the body. This is the path. Can you feel it in your body? Yes, absolutely. I'm very familiar with it. He said, what's underneath it? And again, I thought, what a weird question. Let me see. And what was underneath it was sadness. Now, sadness is an emotion. That's on the wheel, too. It's not a story, it's an emotion. Sadness was unreal. How about that? Are you telling me that there is a sadness in me that has been driving this my entire life? I'm almost 60. Part of me is like, how long does this take? Well, it's timeless, don't worry. When you get there, you get there. It doesn't matter, it's not a competition. And then the healing happened, and I'm going to start laughing. So this is I was very tearful during this time as he led me through. I trust him. He said, what's underneath the sadness? And I looked. And this is when I started laughing. And I could not stop. It was almost embarrassing. I laughed like I haven't laughed since I was a kid. I couldn't talk. And this went on. We're talking a couple of minutes at least, which seems like a couple of hours. He said, what's underneath the sadness? And I looked, and guess what's under it? Nothing. Nothing is under it. Nothing. And a part of me, I started laughing, and then I was sort of annoyed. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Years, decades, I have been driven by this, and it's nothing. There's nothing under it whatsoever. Now the beauty of that is because there's nothing under it, I'm healed. It's done. It's gone. It is gone. It doesn't happen anymore. Now that emotion is still on my palate. I can still feel sad, and my mind will still tell the story of despair, but it went from this big to this big. It's unbelievable. And I have had, this may be the fourth healing experience of this depth and impact that I've had in my life. And this one was in November. So when we say silence is the language of God, what was underneath the sadness? Silence. Nothing. There's nothing. And I did say out loud, and you've got to be kidding me. Is this some kind of cosmic joke? There's nothing under there. So that is what happens when we pursue this path. I couldn't have planned it. I didn't decide that it was going to happen. I didn't even know. I just showed up for my hour. This is over Zoom even. Talk about distance healing. It works. And yet there it was. Why? Because I keep showing up. Keep coming back. Now notice when we sit and do a breath awareness meditation, what do? Keep coming back. Bring your attention wanders, bring your attention back to your breath. My teacher used to say without judgment. I used to say that too, and then after a while I believed that I was returning my attention without judgment until I saw all the judgment about it. There's layers of that too. Layers of that. You see the patterns that are involved here. Keep coming back. Be still and know that I am God, the song says, which is exactly what I did when this healing happened. I'll see how I feel tomorrow. I predict I'm going to be just fine. And I'm going to throw this in too. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to maintain a story like that. And when the healing happens, all that energy is now available, when before it wasn't. So my life energy level jumped, and it has stayed there. And it's weird, and sometimes even annoying. Like, I used to like to sleep late in the morning. My favorite day was the day I didn't have to set an alarm. I wanted every day to be a day. I basically wanted to be retired. Every day to be a day I didn't have to set an alarm. And guess what happens now? I wake up at 4:30. I wake up at 6:30. And part of me is like, I need to get more sleep. No, I actually don't need to get more sleep. I don't want to be up at 6:30. There's nothing I want to do at 6:30 in the morning. Or maybe I'm going to have to learn some new things with this change. My point is that energy was released is now available. It's in my fuel tank, when before it was occupied, like trying to keep a beach ball under the water at the swimming pool. It takes a lot of energy. You let it go, you get all that energy back. It's an amazing thing. Unbelievable. Be still and know that I am God. I feel like maybe I know what that means now. Or at least have a meaning. And I hope it's helpful to you. I'm going to close with this affirmation, and then we're going to move right into a time of meditation. The affirmation is this: grounded in prayer, we awaken to the light within us, transforming our lives and the world. Can you see that happening? Together, grounded in prayer, we awaken to the light within us, transforming our lives and the world. Now take a breath, just like we did before, and notice it.